Hi, my name is Gilbert Ambler. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and much of my practice involves firearms law. Now, I do a lot with firearms. I do everything from representing those who have had denials of a concealed handgun permit to those who wish to restore gun rights from something that took their gun rights away in the past, to representing federal firearms licensees, manufacturers, importers, dealers of firearms, all the way up to dealing with self-defense cases. And what I want to talk to you about today is an often misunderstood concept in Virginia, and that is the concept of the Castle Doctrine. Now, the Castle Doctrine, I think, is largely misunderstood because it's confusing. It's just not very clear in Virginia. One of the reasons it's not clear is it's not statutory law. It's not written into code in Virginia. It's common law. It comes from judge-made law, and it comes from what we have learned, lessons we have learned from various cases over the past several hundred years. And before we dive into this subject, I want to note I am an attorney. I am not your attorney right now, and you need to get specific legal advice for any specific set of facts that you may be dealing with. What we're talking about right now are just broad, generalized concepts. And I want to look at a couple of cases and start to figure out what might the Castle Doctrine really be saying in Virginia. The first cases that we're going to look at are a pair of cases. It's the Heinz case. They're both appellate cases. The Heinz case from 2016, which the Heinz case looked heavily to another appellate case known as the Fortune case. And the Fortune case dates all the way back to 1922. And these cases taken together stand for the proposition that a homeowner has the right to use force, and at times, under the right circumstances, even deadly force, to expel a trespasser who assaults him in his home, in his dwelling, or in the curtilage of his home or dwelling. And we're going to break down a little bit more what the courts have said about this subject and what these different terms mean. The first term I want to break down for you is I want to break down what does curtilage mean? Because we need to know, before we know what the Castle Doctrine says and what it does, we need to know how far does it actually extend. And obviously inside your house, inside your home, or inside your dwelling, the place where you're sleeping, we get Castle Doctrine protection there. But it also extends to the curtilage. And curtilage has not been clearly defined, but it's the area around your home in which the privacies of your home are associated. When I think of curtilage, I always think of a hot tub on a back patio. If you've got a hot tub on your back patio, you probably have the same type of expectation of privacy in that curtilage that you would have inside the rest of your home. So that's where we're going to extend the Castle Doctrine. We're going to extend it to the area immediately surrounding your home in which you might have that expectation of privacy. And again, our definition of curtilage isn't even in cases discussing Castle Doctrine is never clearly defined. Our best definitions of curtilage come from cases discussing concealed carry, because it is unlawful, generally speaking, in Virginia without a concealed handgun permit to conceal carry a firearm. But there's an exception in your home, in your abode, and in the curtilage of your home. And so in those cases, they've really started to talk about how far curtilage extends. And that's where I'm getting this generalization that in the portions of your home where you associate the privacy of your home, we probably are going to be able to extend the Castle Doctrine. So now that we know how far Castle Doctrine extends, what does it say? What does it do for you? Well, the first thing it does, we're looking for someone who's making unlawful entry. So if they've got a right to be there, that presents a whole different set of facts. And in fact, that set of facts was taken up by the Virginia appellate courts in a case known as the Robles case in 2018. The Robles case involved two people that actually lived together, and the Court of Appeals of Virginia declined to apply the Castle Doctrine in that context, saying that it was unclear from looking at past case law that the Castle Doctrine would apply against somebody who co-resided, lived in the home. And of course, that's because if they're living there, they have a right to be there. It's not a situation where they made unlawful entry. So first, we're looking for some type of unlawful entry, all right? Now, we said expelling a trespasser who commits an assault against the homeowner. The trespasser is someone who has made unlawful entry. When we talk about the assault, we're looking for something that is going to give you reasonable fear of death or great bodily harm. And that's consistent with our typical justification standard for when you are able to use deadly force. So how does the Castle Doctrine add to this? Well, I think what the Castle Doctrine is doing is it's saying if someone has already made unlawful entry, that's going to help you establish, because you've got the right to get rid of that person, to kick them out of your home. It's going to help establish your fear of that person if they then assault you in this area where you expect to have the privacy of your home. And of course, the use of deadly force is never allowed, and you can't even, case law has narrowed down when you can expel a trespasser in Virginia. You can't even brandish a firearm, nor can you commit an assault at the outset when expelling a trespasser. But because you have the right to go engage a trespasser, you don't have to flee from the trespasser. You can go talk to that person. You can kick that person out. And when you are kicking that person out, should things start to escalate or should the person assault you, now we're triggering that Castle Doctrine requirement. And that Castle Doctrine requirement, again, going to be an element or going to be something that the court looks to in establishing that you had the right not only to kick them out, but you also had a reasonable fear of a person who not only was bold enough to make unlawful entry, but then bold enough to assault you in your home after they made unlawful entry. And so this is all going to help support our justification defense. And I want to go back to that because I'm using the term justification defense. We have two types of self-defense in Virginia, one being justification defense, or a defense where self-defense is alleged without your fault, meaning you didn't have a hand in getting the altercation started. You didn't do anything to provoke it. And I think that's the other thing, and I'm hypothesizing here because there are no cases clearly saying this in Virginia. This is my theory on what the Castle Doctrine does for you. It means, in my belief from reading these cases, it stands for the proposition that because somebody made unlawful entry to your home or to the curtilage of your home, you have the right to approach them, and even though you're the one going to them, even though you're the one who might be starting to talk to them, starting to engage that other person, that trespasser, that's not going to be considered as you starting the altercation because they really started it by making unlawful entry. This is important because the law in Virginia says that if you were the one who started the altercation, justifiable self-defense is no longer available as a legal defense for you. If you start the altercation in Virginia, now we're looking at a legal term known as excusable self-defense, and excusable self-defense requires you to do two things before you would even get to the traditional self-defense elements of reasonable fear of imminent death or great bodily harm. And the two additional requirements that we're looking for are, number one, you attempt to flee, you attempt to escape, and number two, you communicate by words or actions your desire for peace. And so what the Castle Doctrine, and again, this is just my belief, but what it does for you, I think, is it says that even though you're the one going and you're the one approaching that trespasser, you're not the one starting the altercation in doing so. So we don't need to worry about if things start escalating after you approach the trespasser. We don't need to worry about those additional requirements that you attempt to flee and that you communicate, you say, I'm so sorry, communicate your desire for peace, because you didn't start the thing. You weren't the one who started it, even though you were the one who approached them, because Castle Doctrine says you have the right to expel a trespasser from your home and from the curtilage of your home. And again, I want to remind you, when you're going and approaching a trespasser, if they are just a trespasser, if you're not afraid of them, you just think they're trespassing, you don't have the right at the beginning to brandish a firearm or commit an assault. This is when we're talking about the right to use deadly force. That's after things escalate, after you try to kick them out and things escalate and they attack you. I also want to note that in many situations where you might be expelling a trespasser, it's really not just about expelling a trespasser. Because remember, you can't brandish, you can't commit an assault at the beginning if it's just about expelling a trespasser. But most of these situations, in my experience, involve fear of the person, and it's not really just about kicking them out. It's about you being afraid of them because they have already come into an area where you don't expect them, and so you're caught off guard, you're surprised by their presence. And we're thinking home invasion, middle of the night, right? Someone has come into your house. If you brandish a firearm at that point, that's really not just about you trying to kick them out of your home. That's about you being afraid of this person who has made unlawful and forcible entry to your home. Now, If you have further questions about castle doctrine, because as I said, this is a complicated subject. We're looking at appellate level cases, trying to discern what these cases say. If you have further questions about this doctrine, you can reach me at my office at 540-550-4236. And again, this is attorney Gilbert Ambler from Ambler Law Offices, and you can reach me at 540-550-4236.